Okay guys, so I'm gonna show you guys how to do a couple problems together. Like we're just gonna do two really. And then you're gonna do 10 examples on your own on Delta Math, but you gotta show your work, so I left you guys boxes to do that with. Okay, so for the first one, we're gonna do it exactly the same like we've done the rest. This is a normal problem. How can I tell that this is a regular trig problem? Because you're asked to find a side. When you're finding a side, then you're using the normal trig functions. So sine, cosine, or tan. Okay, so first, if you cannot label the triangle correctly, like hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent, you're gonna struggle. So you need to be able to do that really, really well. So we start from the angle that is labeled. We have 71 degrees. Okay, that means that these two are H and A. H and A. Either H is on the right and then A on the left, or maybe it's H on the left and A on the right. So which one is the correct one? Well, I look at the 90 degree. Okay, here's the 90 degree. It points always to the hypotenuse. So that means that the hypotenuse is on the left with X. So this is the hypotenuse. And this one is adjacent. Okay, so the side on the bottom is adjacent. And then this is the opposite side. All right, so we want to get rid of the side that is empty, so that's adjacent, because it didn't have anything on it, like nothing was here. We can only use O and H, so that's going to be sine. So we're going to do the sine of some degree is equal to a ratio, okay, a fraction of the opposite and the hypotenuse. What goes in the degree? 71 degrees. What goes in opposite? 23, and hypotenuse, X. And now we solve for X. Okay, how to get X by itself? X is on the right side of the equal sign over here. It says 23 divide by X. That's how you read it. So the opposite of dividing is to multiply by X. And then you multiply by X because you do the same thing to both sides. Last step is now, well, what do we have left? We have X times sine of 71 degrees is equal to 23. There's nothing else. Okay, so now you got to get X by itself. So now instead of multiplying by sine, you're going to divide by sine. So now I'm going to divide by sine 71. These turn into 1. Sine 71 divided by sine 71 is 1. So I'm going to cancel it. And it's X times 1. So it's just X. So I am done because X is by itself. But on the other side, I got to do the same thing. Divide by sine 71. All right, and that is my answer. If you type that into the calculator, you would get a decimal answer, a decimal estimate, or you can also just, this is the exact answer. All right, so let's go to decimals really quick. Don't forget on decimals, you got to click the wrench on the top right and change it 2 degrees. And now you can type in here. So fraction, divide, and then I don't remember what it was, 23 divided 23, and on the bottom, sine 71. And that's our answer, 24 point, and then it depends on how you have to round. 24.3, I'm going to say for now. But sometimes I make you guys round to 3 decimal places. X equals 24.3. So that is how long the hypotenuse is, 24.3. Does it make sense? So let's think about the problem. Does this answer make sense? It should be the longest side. It is bigger than 23, so yeah, that makes sense. If I got like 20, no, that does not make sense because the hypotenuse is the biggest side. So there you go. Good. All right, so what we are doing today on Friday, what you guys should be learning is inverses. Okay, you guys are going to learn the inverse of sine. So on your calculators, above the buttons, sine, cosine, and tangent, there's sine inverse, cosine inverse, and tan inverse. And those all you have to click the second button first, the blue button, and then click sine, or second cosine, second tan. Don't hold the buttons, just press this blue button and then the sine button or cosine or tan. Okay, so what's an inverse? An inverse is where things are reversed from the original. Okay, so if we think about the original, let's talk about sine again. Sine, regular sine, takes the degree inside in here, and then it equals a fraction, a ratio of the opposite and the hypotenuse. When you do the inverse now, what it's going to do is it's going to switch the degree with the ratio. So when we are doing the inverse, it's because you're doing sine inverse. Why? Because you know two sides. Now you know two sides. You know the opposite side and the hypotenuse side. And it equals, what does it equal? If from the top, if they switch places, it equals the degree. So what this means is now in the triangle, you know two outsides. I know 71 and I know 64. And now I am finding the degree. So when the degree is missing, you guys have to use inverse trig. Here, we knew the degree, we knew one side, and we needed to find another side. So that's when you use the inverse, when the degree and the ratio need to switch, so that then we can find the degree instead of the ratio. All right, so for the triangle, the same process. You guys have to label the triangle. Okay, where is the degree? Right here. It means these two sides right here, the one with 71 and SR, those two sides are H and A, H and A. Which one is H? Well, I'm going to look at the 90-degree box, and it is pointing to 71. So 71 is the hypotenuse, and SR, the side SR, is adjacent. This side right here is adjacent next to X, the degree, and across from it is 64, opposite. We do not need one side. That would be adjacent because it was blank. There's nothing there. So we can only use O and H. And again, that would be sine. Cosine is AH and tangent is OA, opposite and adjacent. So for this one, we are going to use inverse of sine. So we're going to write sine inverse. And here is where you put the ratio. So opposite goes on top, 64, and on the bottom, 71. And this is your answer. When you type that into the calculator, it's going to give you the degree. So we're going to go to decimals. If you guys are typing it on your keyboard, again, make sure that you're using degrees at home. And then you can type with your fingers, SIN. For the little -1 to go up, you press Shift 6 on your keyboard and then put a -1, then come back down. For here, you could also click functions, the button functions, and it's where it says inverse, all with the -1. And we're going to put, it was 64 on top of 71. 64 divided by 71. And the answer is 64 point, and again, depends on how you round, but I am going to say 1 decimal place, 64.3. So it equals 64.3 degrees. That is how big that angle is. Okay, right here, 64.3. Now we could figure out angle Q because we know that a triangle adds up to 180. So if we do 180 minus 90 degrees, because we have a 90, minus 64.3, then we would get the answer to Q. But sometimes it's better to do more rounding so you get a better answer for Q. Okay, and that's how you do inverses. They're actually a lot easier. So let me double check one more. Let's do one more. So we are finding the degree. And if you're finding the degree, that means you need to use the inverses. Right here next to the degree, these sides are H and A. Which one is H? Go to the 90-degree box and it points to H. So the hypotenuse is the side OQ. That's the hypotenuse. And then 56 is adjacent. That's next to the degree. And then across from it is opposite, 42 degrees. This side is opposite. Not 42 degrees, my bad. It's not 42 degrees. It's just 42. So the degrees are only the ones inside the angles. Which one do we not need? What side do we not need? The hypotenuse. So which trig function do we have to use? Tangent, inverse tan. Tan inverse of what sides do we know? It should be OA. Opposite is 42. Adjacent is 56. This is the answer. Type it into the calculator and it's going to give you the degree quantity. So tan inverse um 42 divided by 56. And it is 36.86 degrees. So I'm going to say 36.9 degrees. X equals 36.9 degrees. So now we know how many degrees this angle is. 36.9. Alright, so now hopefully that helped. If not, you guys can totally go to YouTube and look up more videos, inverse trig functions, or Google how to find an angle using inverse trig. But yeah, you guys are now doing some examples on delta math. Make sure you draw them and show your work. Bye guys, see you Monday.